Senator Carper is next in order of appearance.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I don't always time my arrival this well. We've had a lot of hearings going on today. It's a run up to a 2-week recess, and I think every chairman of the committee is trying to make sure they have their hearings done today, tomorrow, as well. But we're grateful for you to be here, and I have a special interest in these issues. It goes back a long way. But we thank you for joining us today, and someone who cares deeply about fiscal responsibility. And I care a lot about customer service, hugely care about customer service. When I was a little boy, I used to go back to West Virginia to my aunt and uncle's supermarket just off of the turnpike in Beckley, West Virginia, called Patton's Market. And you go into that store, and it would say, welcome to Patton's Market, friendliest store in Beckley. And my grandfather was a butcher, and my aunt and uncle ran the place, and if you walked in that place, man, they knew your name. If you needed a special cut of meat, my grandfather would get it for him. If you needed home delivery, they'd deliver. If you needed to charge it, this is before we had credit cards, they'd charge it and all. But I learned a whole lot about treating other people the way you want to be treated. There's a great quote, and it turns out I think it's Mark Twain. People don't care how much you know until you know how much they know how much you care. Isn't that a great quote? No, it's Teddy Roosevelt. That's Teddy Roosevelt. It's not a likely quote you'd hear from. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And when I was governor of Delaware, the Delaware Division of Revenue, which basically was the state version of the IRS, won my last term. They won the Delaware Quality Award for best service of any government or a nonprofit or business in the state. And so we highly value, and I still highly value customer service. But I want to talk a little bit today, or ask you to talk a little bit about today, about the fiscal impact of cutting in investments in the IRS rather than reducing our deficit. The repeal of the IRS funding in Speaker McCarthy's bill would unfortunately actually add nearly $120 billion to the deficit. It should not be a partisan issue to support the idea that people should pay the taxes that they owe. And that is especially true for corporations and wealthy individuals who make up a large share of the tax gap. I want to make sure I pronounce your name correct. Mr. Soren? Sir? Ms. Doctor, excuse me. Doctor. Is that right? Soren?
Soren is great, yeah.
Oh, that's good. Has anybody ever mispronounced your name?
My parents say it different ways, so.
Oh, that's good. I feel better. Give them our best. How does funding for the IRS bolster the fiscal health of our nation? And how would the repeal of these investments I just alluded to impact taxpayer compliance?
Thank you for your question, Senator
Sure.
Carper. As you mentioned, the CBO has sort of commented on this question and has remarked that the IRA would raise nearly $200 billion in new tax collections, or around $115 billion net of the IRA investment over the next decade. I have a new paper out with former Assistant Secretary for Tax Policy Mark Mazur this week that addresses this question as well. And we conclude that while directionally definitely right, we think that the IRA investments are likely to raise much more, around $560 billion over the course of the next decade, and around $1.5 trillion over the course of the next 2 decades. And the reason for that is that as the IRS starts to build up enforcement capacity in these areas that you speak of, Senator Carper, global high net worth, complex partnerships, high-end evasion, where they essentially have no capacity today, what you're going to see is direct revenue coming in from those enforcement activities. But what you're also going to see is you're going to see taxpayer behavior adjust very substantially for these investments. And particularly, taxpayers who make errors that are identified by the IRS, we know they're unlikely to make those same errors in future years. And there's also a community deterrent effect when taxpayers and tax preparers realize that the IRS is on the beat. They adjust their behavior accordingly and are more compliant voluntarily.
Thanks. One more quick question, if I can. This tax filing season, we've already seen tremendous progress in the ability of the IRS to provide good customer service for taxpayers. It's really encouraging. In fact, during the 2023 filing system, I think the agency was able to answer nearly 90% of phone calls. I have a friend who says, compared to what? Well, compared to like a year ago, when I think it was like 16% of calls being answered. So a huge improvement. I think it's due in large part to the investment we've made in the IRS questions. For you, Dr. Soren, can you talk with us just briefly about, and you have already on this a little bit, just a bit more about what the repeal of this funding would mean for customer service that the IRS provides to everyday taxpayers seeking support? Thank you.
And it's entirely because of the investment you made. So the IRS was able to hire 5,000 new people to be on the phones. The level of service grew to 87% from 15% in 1 year. The IRS was able to digitize thousands more forms this year. The IRS cut phone wait times from 27 minutes to 4 minutes. This filing season is proof in concept of what a resourced IRS is going to be able to deliver for taxpayers. But we're not at the level of customer service that your market is able to provide just yet. And what the agency needs to do over the course of the next few years, and what you see them allude to in the strategic plan, is invest in taxpayer service that allows the IRS to meet taxpayers where they are. So that means phone service. It also means in-person assistance at taxpayer assistance centers. But what it also means is you should be able to communicate with the IRS digitally and instantaneously, if you want to, on your phone, the way you can communicate with your financial institution today.
I'm my
Yeah,
colleague.
thanks for the time. Thank you.
Senator Johnson.
Hey, Mr. Chair.